G'day, Exodus 24 and 25. I'm really enjoying digging into Exodus, loving doing some research to help me pull these videos together. Today we're going to talk about, you would have read chapters 24 and 25. We're going to talk about chapter 24, which is the covenant ceremony being ratified. And then next week we'll talk about some of the content of chapter 25 as we talk about the tabernacle and its furniture. It's going to be really interesting. It's much more interesting to talk about than it is to read. But chapter 24, we have a covenant ceremony being ratified. Now, that's a complicated sentence, so let me break that down for you. A covenant is an agreement between two parties. It was a typical feature in ancient Near Eastern living, and it's essentially the same as what a contract is for us. But maybe the stakes were a little bit higher than contracts often are. So have in your mind the idea of a contract, work contract, phone contract, gas and electricity contract, rental agreement, that kind of thing. Two parties enter in and both have to uphold their end of the deal. And so that's what a contract is for us. A covenant was a similar concept. In the context of the Bible, these covenants are entered into between God and humans, and God makes promises and the humans make commitments, and they have to hold to their end of the deal. And so that's what we have in chapter 24. God has outlined what he has done for Israel, and he has outlined what he expects from Israel. This is in the 10 Commandments that he gave in chapter 20, and then in the book of the covenant that he gave to Moses in chapter 20 to 23, he's told them what he expects from them. And then in this chapter, Moses brings all those things to the people, and he says, and the people say in return to Moses, everything the Lord has said, we will do. And then Moses, he goes and he writes down the 42 laws of the book of the covenant. And verse 7, he took the book of the covenant and read it to the people. And they responded, we will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey. So they agreed to the terms of the covenant. And then the way that the covenant was ratified, they didn't have biros and paper, so they didn't sign it on the dotted line, but instead they made a sacrifice. This is an interesting sacrifice because it's not a sacrifice made by priests, it's made by the young men of Israel. And this kind of suggests that this isn't just meant to be a kingdom with priests, it's not just meant to be a tribe or a nation that have a priesthood. This is meant to be a kingdom of priests to the nations around them. So Israel itself are meant to be representing God to the nations around them, in order that the nations around them could be blessed through Israel. That's God's whole plan through this covenant. He wants the nations to be blessed. And the way that the covenants were ratified in the ancient world is through the shedding of blood. And so people think that this is because it was a way of saying that if either party does not uphold their end of the bargain, of the deal, then this will be their fate. They will have their blood shed. And so Moses, he takes the blood, which in verse 8, and he sprinkles it on the people. Not the kind of shower that you really want, but that's what he does. And he says, this is the blood of the covenant that Yahweh has made with you in accordance with all these words. And then what happens next is really pretty fascinating. Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, they're Aaron's sons, and 70 of the elders go up the mountain. And when they are up the mountain, it says, they saw the God of Israel. And when they saw the God of Israel, he did not raise his hand against them, verse 11. They saw God and they ate and drank. Wow. They see God. Now, what exactly they are seeing, it's not clear, because in chapter 33, we're told that no one can see the face of God and live. And so what is happening here? Well, maybe they're seeing a part of God. Maybe they're just seeing the place where he is standing, since that's outlined for us. We're not quite sure what they're seeing, but the interesting thing is that they see God, and God doesn't raise his hand against them, as in he doesn't kill them or punish them. Instead, he eats and drinks with them. It's meant to recall for us the garden story back in Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. It's meant to recall for us what happens with Abraham in Genesis 18 when he finds out that he is dining and hosting the angel of the Lord. It's also for us Christians on the other side of Jesus. It recalls many scenes from the life of Jesus where he eats and drinks with people. Numerous occasions he eats and drinks with people. But it's a remarkable scene. These men are eating with God on the mountain. And then Moses is called to go further up the mountain. He takes his assistant Joshua with him, and further up the mountain, the Lord settles onto the mountain and he speaks with Moses, and they stay there for 40 days and for 40 nights. So that's the scene, chapter 24. Pretty big deal, this chapter. A couple of things that I want to talk about. So the words of Moses when he sprinkles the blood on the people, they might sound familiar to us because Jesus picks up these words for himself when he is at his last supper with his disciples. And he says to the 12 disciples in front of him, echoing the 12 tribes of Israel whom Moses was speaking to, he says, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for their forgiveness of sins." Now, did you notice that Moses says, "This is the blood of the covenant"? Jesus says, "This is my blood of the covenant." Jesus is fulfilling this covenant agreement, because it doesn't surprise you to hear that even though Israel was keen to obey the law, they did not obey the law. In fact, we don't even need to read far to see that they fail miserably. But Jesus himself fulfills the law. And as the one who fulfills the terms of the covenant, Jesus comes to us and he offers his blood. And that blood is the thing that makes it possible for us to enter into the presence of God. And as a result of this bloodshed from Jesus, God's people are invited to share a meal with God. Jesus at the Last Supper itself is a picture of this. He is eating and drinking with his people. And we're told that on the last day, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, will be like a banquet where we will eat and drink with God. So this chapter, even though it's shrouded in ancient practices and it's a bit weird to read, it is a picture for us of the access we have to God through Jesus. And it is a remarkable thing. Have a good day.